What's up, YouTube? Tenchi Arizonia, the angry Dracolope of the Jackalope crew here, and tonight I have a bit of a story time for you. But first, I want to address a cryptid known as the Beast of Buckton. Now, it could be a cryptid, it might not be. I'm inclined to think that it isn't, because there is only one source for this story, or one source for reports, and the same source is constantly repeated. This source being the Bridlington Echo. When you search the Beast of Buckton, the only source for reports on this critter, this cryptid or whatever it happens to be, is a small local paper, which is the Bridlington Echo. And when I say small, I mean it is a small paper, even by British standards. The town of Bridlington has around 35,000 residents, which honestly is not that many. It's not incredibly small, but it's not incredibly large. In fact, the area I live has way more residents than that. So let that just give you a hint. Now, Bridlington is known to have paranormal occurrences. It actually has a place called Treasure Island Mini Golf, and if you look that up, it is known for having hauntings there. However, if you look up the Beast of Buckton, the only report comes from an article in the Bridlington Echo in 2019. No mentions prior to that, and the only other source is a guest spot on a radio show called Coast to Coast, where the guest was a ufologist / paranormal investigator here in the UK called Paul Sinclair, who actually has a book. But here's the thing, the reports on this Beast of Buckton are only from him. He said he'd done an investigation. He said he got reports from locals, which is kind of fishy considering the only source is the Bridlington Echo and it's only his word. He claimed to have spoken to locals and farmers. He claims that one of the reports he got had sheep slaughtered. But here's the thing. If you do a general search for the Beast of Buckton, the only thing that comes up is the report featuring Paul Sinclair. Which I consider incredibly sketchy. Don't worry, I've just got a splinter in my finger there from my firewood. That fucking stung. It didn't go in because I'm not seeing any blood. Anyway, this is incredibly sketchy because the only reports are from his investigation. I don't put any stock in his investigation, as you may guess, because he's the only source of these reports. Even the Bridlington Echo, where it was first reported, only lists him as a source for this information regarding this Beast of Buckton, which is said to be a large cat. So, let me point this out to you. There are myths of big cats in some areas of the UK, such as Shaftesbury in Wiltshire, and other areas as well, but mostly centred around the south of the UK. And the fact that the only source for this story about the Beast of Buckton is Mr. Paul Sinclair himself and a report of an investigation he did, And that's what the article from the Bridlington Echo is. It's a report of him doing an investigation surrounding this cryptid, beast, whatever you want to call it. Don't worry, I was just checking if I actually did have a splinter in me. I actually don't. So, that's good. Now, the reason I take criticism with this investigation is because I have had experiences with events concerning the big cat myths and cryptids, whatever you want to call them, here in the UK. I've done a story time about one, and even before I posted that story time, I did actually contact people in Shaftesbury that I still know in that area, and they confirmed that those events are still happening. So that's how you do research. I had research from locals in the area. You can search up the mythology of it and you'll see reports, albeit scattered, but not just one report. Likewise with the Beast of Bodmin Moor, another mythological or cryptid. I'm not sure which you class it as, so take your pick. Lots of reports, even mentioned in novels such as The Hound of the Baskervilles. And The Hound of the Baskervilles actually is a take on the Beast of Bodmin Moor. They just changed the name to The Hound of the Baskervilles to better fit the Sherlock Holmes motif, because it was a Sherlock Holmes story. My point is, these occurrences, multiple reports. Anyway, now that I've got that out of the way, let's get on to tonight's story time, which actually involves a cryptid of sorts. Not a well-known one, and not one that has a consistent name. So I'm just going to call them the Black Dogs. You will know the myths. They do have reports here in the UK. Let me just prod my fuel a bit so it doesn't collapse where I don't want it to. Because when your fuel collapses where you don't want it to, you end up with problems. So, Black Dogs. Do I mean black dogs like black Labradors? Hell no. No, nothing like that. What I mean is the Black Dog myths of demonic black dogs with glowing red eyes. One of the most common areas for these black dog myths is Dartmoor and also the moors of Cornwall. There have also been stories of these black dogs in Yorkshire, which, for those wondering, is actually where I was born. Let's just get this bit of wood out, fill out my fire, so I can put it back in a bit. So, these black dog myths have a lot of reports. No matter where you go, if you search Black Dog UK myth, it'll come up with areas like Cornwall, like Dartmoor. I believe there were at some point reports of these creatures in the New Forest. I'll have to look into that in the future, because I do like looking into these sort of things. So yeah, black dogs. Have I had an encounter with said black dogs? Well, no, I've not had an encounter. I've had a few encounters with these so-called black dogs. Do they match up to the myths surrounding them? Namely, do they have glowing red eyes? Do they disappear without a trace? The answer to both questions is yes, they do. Where did I encounter mine? I encountered mine in Dartmoor. Now, I'm not going to go into details as to why I was in Dartmoor, because it's quite a ways from where I live. But needless to say, I encountered a black dog there. It did have glowing red eyes. And it did disappear without a trace. Can I explain it? Not really. I wish I could, but I can't really explain it. Which is something of a shame. That being said, it is a curious thing. And excuse me while I just cut this recording briefly and I'll get back to you. Okay, so back to my story about my occurrence with a black dog that happened in Dartmoor. As I said, I'm not going to mention what I was doing in Dartmoor at the time, because it is a significant distance from where I actually live. But I can tell you there are countless reports of black dogs, specifically in the Dartmoor and Cornwall areas. It is not hard to find reports on these entities, these creatures, whatever they happen to be. But I'll tell you of my occurrence. See, I was walking the moors. As I said, I'm not going to tell you why I was up there, but I was walking the moors and I got lost. It's about the same time of day that it is now, so mid-evening. And there was no street lights, no firelight, nothing like that. It's just ambient light from the moon and the stars. And I stopped for a while, just sitting down on the ground, because I'd been walking for quite a while and my legs were sore. And off in the distance, I saw a black dog. What I assumed was just a regular Labrador. It wasn't a regular Labrador. Then you can probably hear my neighbours, but we'll have to cope with that. So anyway, it wasn't a Labrador. How did I know that? Well, a fucking Labrador ain't that big for starters. We're talking a dog that was like 4 foot at the shoulder. So an absolutely massive canine, if it was indeed an actual dog. Because a lot of reports about these black dogs say they're not actually dogs, that they're actually spirits or demons. I don't know about that, but I can tell you that these dogs are huge, completely black, with glowing red eyes. And by the way, folks, dogs' eyes do not glow red. I can tell you that much. And I don't think there's any dog that is 4 foot at the shoulder that's completely black, even in moonlight. So basically no light reflecting off the fur at all. Anyway, back to the story at hand. As I said, I was sat down on the ground and I saw this black dog. And I had no idea what I was thinking. You could probably see where this is going. I had no idea what I was thinking at the time, but I decided to go towards it. Yeah, nice move, rocket scientists. These are sometimes called demon dogs or dog entities, all this sort of thing. And I decided to go towards it. Well, as it turned out, going towards it ended up being the right thing to do in my situation. Because as I went towards it, and I had to go uphill to get towards it, as I crested the hill, no sign of the dog, by the way, at this point. when I arrived where it was standing, when I was seated, no dog there, no tracks. But once I crested the hill, I could see off in the distance on the horizon line the faint lights of one of the villages that are dotted around the edges of the Dartmoor. Well, not exactly round the edges, but round the edges is the best way I can explain it, because they're not right in the midst of the moors. So, yeah, I kind of classify them on the edges because there are roads where the villages are. I only consider them more to be no roads. So, on the edge of Dartmoor, on the horizon line, I could see village lights. And the horizon line from the crest of this hill would have been about 10, 12 miles away. So I continued walking through the night and eventually came to the village in the morning. As it so happened, the time I got to the village was about the time the businesses were starting to open, so around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning. It took me the entire night to walk the distance from where I was at the crest of the hill where I saw the black dog to the village. Not because I'm a slow walker, you understand, because the terrain is rather rough in Dartmoor, boggy. There's boggy areas, there's dry areas, and the area I was cutting through happened to be one of the more boggy ones. So I had to basically take a circuitous route around the worst of the area. Anyway, I get to the village, and the first person I come across seemed surprised at the direction I was coming from. Because, as I said, boggy area. I had to skirt around the worst of it, but yeah, I was cutting through basically masses of bogs. They seemed incredibly surprised at the way I was coming in. So I explained to them that, yeah, last night I saw a black dog. Black fur with no reflection of the moonlight off of its fur, glowing red eyes. I explained to them I was on the other side of a large hill that allowed me to see the village from the horizon. You could actually see the hill on the horizon line as well, so I pointed back towards the hill, and the person who I was speaking to seemed absolutely terrified at the prospect that I had come from that far away across the bog, because it is well known to be a difficult to traverse area. And yes, I'm aware my light has died because my fire's burning low. Let me just put a few more chunks in, see if I can stoke the ashes into some form of life. Come on, baby. Give me some firelight. Oh, shoot. Come on. Excuse me a minute. I may have to pause this to reignite my fire. So I'll be right back. Okay, so I am back again, having brought my fire back to life yet again. And back to the story of my black dog encounter. As I left off, I had spoke to someone in the village that I arrived in, and they seemed, in a word, extremely shocked. Okay, I'll put that fuel back in a minute, once it cools a little. Anyway, the person seemed extremely shocked, if not outright terrified, about where I'd come from. Namely because, as it turns out, as I found out, the area that I came from is known for a lot, and I mean a lot, of black dog sightings. Not all of them benevolent. But when I told the person that the reason I was at the village is because I walked towards the black dog, they seemed a little more relieved. Which is kind of strange, because up until that point, everything I'd heard about black dogs said that if you saw one, if you encountered one, you were pretty much fucked. And not in the good way. So, kind of surprising there. But I guess it goes to prove that not every report is going to be accurate.
Turn up the volume.
Although the majority of them generally are. Now, I've been to Dartmoor several times since then, and never had another encounter, but I do keep up to date on the various reports, and there are a lot of them. Not a small amount at all, a lot. When I do say a lot, I do mean it. And I'm going to let my cigar go out now because it's pretty much down to a nub. But the difference being with my report is I knew before going to Dartmoor that there were stories about black dogs with glowing red eyes, because I'd read The Hound of Baskervilles and I'd looked up online. This was back when dial-up was a thing. Who remembers that? I'd looked up online various reports of black dogs. Didn't find any reports of the benevolent kind though, which leads me to believe that 1, they are a rarer kind, and 2, people prefer to report on the negative, on the malevolent, the evil, whatever you want to call it. Anyway, that's pretty much the story time for tonight. And now I'm going to let my fire die down, and then I will get to editing this video. Anyway, hopefully you enjoyed this story time, and as usual, if you like it, please subscribe, comment and share, and remember, be good to each other.
I'm Dracolope, bitch.